This is my presentation evaluating my personal application of biophysical principles to the skill of carving or skateboarding. In my presentation, I will discuss factors such as sports psychology, skill learning, biomechanics, and how these affected the development of my skill. The trick I have learned to develop is carving, a beginner level trick. Carving is a way of maneuvering, turning, or pivoting the board. Carving can be easily compared to a manual, where you must balance the board on the back two wheels, whereas carving is repetitive movements of leaning back on the back two wheels, using your thigh muscles as antagonists to balance, and swiveling your trunk, more specifically your spine and arms, to change the board's direction and keep balance. This is my post-test.
Oh shit!
As you can see, I could not complete the trick. This is because I had no knowledge of how to execute the trick, and my muscles had no recollection of performing anything that required them to be used that way. Although I couldn't complete the trick, I still had strengths that benefited me, such as my balance when the board was still. This helped me to become more confident to attempt to learn. Although I was well balanced when the board was still, I had trouble keeping a good center of gravity whilst the board was moving, which was an essential part to completing the trick. This YouTube clip shows the ideal carving technique compared to mine. As shown, the skater has confidence in his movements. Because I was new at performing this, I had no self-confidence in what I was doing because I had convinced myself that what I was trying to do was wrong, which resulted in me failing. Another factor that made this harder was the equipment I chose to train in. My shoes and clothes that restricted me were a big factor that didn't benefit my training. The skater in the video has appropriate gear, which made it easier for him to do this. I will start off by discussing how sports psychology correlates with skill learning by explaining how they benefit each other within the skill development. Goal setting was a major component in skating that increased my ability to perform the trick greatly. Making sure all these goals were within my skill level, it provided me with a large amount of motivation which benefited my chances of performing and or learning this trick. Another thing that improved or deteriorated my chances of performing or achieving my goal was the time frame I gave myself to complete said goal. Giving myself a short but moderate time frame improved my results as it gave me high concentration. Scheduling a component of each skill to learn over many periods proved a negative result as I began to slack off and it became obvious which was a better environment to learn in. Goal setting helped me identify my key weak points, which I needed to work on more compared to my strong points. For example, I had noted that although my balance was good while on the board, standing still, I needed to work on keeping my balance while the board was moving by bending my knees. This goal was obvious to assess if I was improving or not, which gave me knowledge if I had to try something different to improve my inertia. These goals tied together to help me achieve my skill, learning attribute, and overall goal. Psychology is defined as the scientific study of the human mind and its functions, especially those affecting behavior in a given context. But because this is sports psychology, in this case, the context is skating, and the behavior is how we react to the development of our skill. When performing or attempting the skill, self-motivation is a key element in which to perform the trick. Self-motivation mentally amps you up. Visualizing how the trick is performed improves your physical performance as the mental technique becomes habit to follow. This improves your attempt at performing the trick, which will result in a better outcome. This results in a better behavior or self-esteem, which greatly improves your willingness to persevere through success and failures, as you know the skill is attainable, which interrelates with goal setting. Without self-motivation, there will be self-doubt and low desire to perform the trick, which would possibly result in a bad outcome, which would demotivate you to ever try again. This is how sports psychology affected my skill development. Skill learning components had a large effect on the progress of my skill. I used closed mass training to improve the advancement of my skill because I believed that small sessions of learning wouldn't have much of an impact on my improvement. Because it is a motor skill and cannot be compared to another known skill I already know, I use mass practice of 2 20-minute sessions per period, given the chance. Mass practice includes attempting the skill repetitively in a large amount of time, so that the muscle movements are repeated over and over. Eventually, the movements become habit. This is known as muscle memory. Muscle memory was a big contributor during the training of my skill, as I automatically remembered when to shift my center of gravity and remembered when to rotate my body when I felt off balance to gain balance again. This muscle memory was constructed during the breakdown of my skill during the training process, a whole part whole method, where the skill is performed, broken down into segments to improve on, then performed again, which gave improved results. These results may not have come to me if I had used short training sessions, which has its disadvantages, as my muscles wouldn't have had enough time to instinctively memorize the movements and wouldn't developed muscle memory as fast as mass practice would have. I will now discuss how biomechanic principles affected the outcome of my skill. Balance and center of gravity played a major role in my practical sessions. Center of gravity and balance have a strong correlation, and by strengthening one, the other is improved. A center of gravity is defined as a point from which the weight of a body or system may be considered to act, which is basically explained as your center of balance. Research shows that to have a greater center of gravity, a lower body position is required. This is why, to increase my balance, I bent my knees in order to get lower to the ground. I also spread out my arms, which is abduction of the arms, and used flexion of the knees to get lower to the ground. Because I now had balance, I could execute the trick. As I had clarified earlier, I had trouble keeping a balanced center of gravity while the board was moving. Because balance is a key factor in this trick, it had a major impact on the outcome and was subject to change each time the skill was performed, due to changing environment factors. In conclusion, this is my attempt at carving after training. As shown, there is an improvement in my abilities because of all these factors combined. My balance and confidence had improved, and this resulted in me completing my overall goal. This has been my presentation of biophysical principles.